Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode of An American in Thailand, airing every Friday. And we broadcast this program to you from Ratchamakan, University of Technology, Peranakan. This program will come to you in two parts. For the first part, I will be introducing a certain topic about being an American here living in Thailand. Could be about food, travel, culture, other things, who knows. And then we'll take a break, and in the second part of the program, we'll get into some examples and more specifics. Okay, let's get to the program. Welcome! My name is Gary Gray, and I am your host here for An American in Thailand. I'm an American English teacher living here in Thailand, and I have been here for about 8 years, actually a little longer than that. So I feel like I've been here long enough that I understand enough of the Thai culture to be able to point out some of the differences between Thai culture and American culture. And I will tell you that today we are actually going to be focusing on culture. And it's a little interesting because I went online to Google some of the differences. I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget any that I thought were important. And what's interesting is some of the websites I ran across were like the differences between Thai culture and European culture. And some of them I could not include here because we don't have that difference in America that Europe has with Thailand. So maybe Europe is even a little more different, at least in some areas. A little more different from Thailand than America is. Not entirely. Most of them were relevant, but not all of them. Now, I should say also that although we're talking about cultural differences, we've already done an episode talking about some of that. So this is going to be a little bit more on the lifestyle side of things. Some of it certainly is cultural related. Like what's accepted, what's not accepted, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, like how we behave. But some of it is more kind of related to maybe what's available or even the economics. Like you'll notice several of the items that we mention here that are different between Thai culture and Western culture. The difference may be more economics. Like in America, in the United States, some people get annoyed when we call the United States America because America includes basically the whole Western Hemisphere. It's North America and South America. But America is really just short for United States of America. So sometimes we say America. We don't mean to offend anyone from the rest of America. Some people get offended by that. They get bothered by that. Call it the United States. Don't call it America. Anyway, speaking of cultural things, cultural issues, some folks in Western culture will get annoyed when people from the United States call it America. It's just short for United States of America. Just like if we called it the U.S. That's not the name either. That's short for United States. And United States is short for United States of America. So don't get upset when we call the U.S. America. Any way we refer to it would be short because we're not going to say the United States of America every time we refer to it. So all of those are just short for United States of America. Okay. That's a cultural issue right there that we have in Western countries between ourselves. All right, so again, when I say America, I mean the U.S. I just want to make that clear because not every American country, if you think of the North and South American continents, not every American country is wealthy. There are especially some countries like in Central America and parts of South America that are quite poor, as a matter of fact. So when I say America is quite wealthy, I mean the United States. So America is much more wealthy than Thailand is. Now, Thailand is not really a poor country, especially compared to some around it. Cambodia is more poor. Laos is more poor. Myanmar is more poor. But relative to the U.S., Thailand is poor. And some of these differences you're going to see are really just related to that. They're just related to that issue. Okay? So what I'm going to do, since I'm giving all of this long introduction, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about each of these differences right now. We will do that so I can give you some examples and more specifics in the second half. So what I'll do here in the first half of our program is I'll really just list off about 9 or 10 items that I came up with. I actually have 9 in my notes here in front of me, but I thought of a 10th one, which I think is a really good example of a cultural / lifestyle difference. I will point out, however, before we get to these, that even though there are a lot of differences, it's not as severe as you might think. And one of the reasons for that is because some of the most difficult cultural issues are about not offending people. And that can be a real problem if you're going to a country which is super religious. Now, certainly, both the United States and Thailand have kind of a strong religious background. In fact, the United States is one of the most religious, industrialized Western countries out there. Most industrialized countries in the West are not very religious at all. They'll call themselves Christian countries. They'll celebrate Christmas and Easter and Christian holidays, but they're not really very religious. Even the United States isn't that religious, but compared to the others, it's the most religious. And here in Thailand, I know that Buddhism is quite important. Not everyone here in Thailand is Buddhist, of course. There's plenty of Muslim folks here. There are some Christian folks here. There's even a few other smaller groups. When I was just walking around somewhere, I don't even remember where it was. Don't remember. But I was walking around somewhere. I walked past some like Jewish Institute here in Jewish Community Center, something like that, here in Bangkok. So there are Jewish people. I'm sure there are Hindu people. I see occasionally Sikhs in Sukhumvit. There's a Sikh community here. So there are many different religions, but I know that Buddhism is kind of the core religion here in Thailand. So it's not that religion is not important in either of these countries, but it doesn't completely dominate the culture. It's certainly visible in the culture. In fact, I even have one item on my list that's about that. That's related to Buddhism. Certainly you can see it in the culture here. But it's not, religion does not control people's lives as it does in some other parts of the world. And because of that, it gives it more of a modern feel because it's more open and accepting for different people, different cultures, different religions. Other religions can survive here. As I just mentioned, there's plenty of Muslim people, there's Christian people, there's plenty of other people here. So other religions can survive here. It's open and tolerant. And because of that, I should tell you that when I moved here, there wasn't a really big culture shock. I found it very easy to come here and live here. Oh, there's certainly some things that bothered me. I've mentioned in past episodes, even about simple things like the kitchens here. Oy. If you live in a condo, there's basically no kitchen. I love to cook. It drives me crazy. You wouldn't see that in America. Even in the smallest of kitchens, in America. Everyone has a stove and an oven. Everyone. And a sink. I've even seen in some apartments here, they don't even have a sink. You have to go into the bathroom if you want a sink. They just have a refrigerator sitting in the middle of an open space living room. That's it. So I'm not saying that there's nothing that there's nothing at all that took me a while to get used to. Still not used to some of those things. I've put in a stove or an oven rather, on my kitchen in my condo. The kitchen still bothers me because now the oven has to be a countertop oven, takes up all the space. Now I have no counter space, so it still bothers me. So it's not like there's nothing that bothered me when I came here. I'm sure there would be things that bother Thai people when they go to America. But like Americans aren't as polite, for example. So you're going to find the people to be maybe not as nice, not as friendly. But generally, it's pretty easy, pretty comfortable here coming to Thailand. So there wasn't a lot of culture shock. So I want to make sure I make that point up front. It's not like these cultural differences are crazy. So let me just run through my list here first. Then in the second half of the program, we'll get to more details, what I mean, what I'm talking about. So on my list here, I have arts and architecture, ladyboys, which is kind of some people may laugh at that, but it's honestly something you notice when you're from the U.S. and you come here. Shoes in the house. Dual pricing and tipping. Those are two really different things, but I'm putting them together because they're about paying for stuff. Stray dogs and cats. Tap water. Respecting the monarchy and leadership in general, although the latter one, maybe not so different. Why? The squat toilet. And last but not least, street food. All right, so again, we'll talk about these details of these in our second half. For now, let's take a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. All right, so we're talking about cultural lifestyle differences between Thailand and the U.S. So what we're going to do here in the second half of our program is I'm just going to go ahead and give you some more details. What do I mean? I gave you a list of 10 items. What are the differences? What am I talking about? Okay, so for example, the very first one, arts and architecture. All right, for architecture, that one's probably obvious, right? Building styles tend to be a little different here in Thailand. It's more of an Eastern architecture. And all of the temples and things like that, which we generally don't have in the U.S. I mean, there are Buddhist temples in the U.S., and a lot of them are built in that style. Make the people feel at home. Make it feel like a Buddhist temple. Follow the culture. That's fine. We do have some in the U.S., but that's not the normal architecture. So that one's pretty simple, right? That's just the difference in the building style. And of course, when you're in the city, when you're talking about high-rise buildings, whatever, those are all the same. Those are the same around the world, really. That's not really any different. We're just talking about kind of the traditional architecture is a little different. But the arts one is maybe a little bit more important, and that is that in wealthier countries, they can afford to support things like more museums and things like that. And so you don't see a lot of that here in Thailand. There's certainly some. I just went to a museum in Kanchanaburi. But usually the art here is more about the local art, like the museum in Kanchanaburi was about the local history. Or a lot of the dancing and things like that is about Thai dance, and it's about the Thai culture. In the United States, it's either much more international or more importantly, it's more general. For example, like scientific museums, which is just about science in general and has nothing to do with the United States. That's something you don't see a lot of here in Thailand. Probably the closest thing you see is I have noticed that there are a fair number of aquariums. An aquarium would be a good example of kind of a general museum. That has nothing to do with Thailand. I mean, they may show off a little bit more of the creatures that are from the waters around Thailand, so you may see a little bit more of that here than you might see in the United States. But mostly an aquarium is kind of a general, kind of science museum. You don't see as much of that here. I would say that is probably the closest, though, is the ones surrounding animals. You also see some safari parks, some elephant sanctuaries, things like that. So you do have some of that here. So the ones around animals, we do have quite a few of here. But other sorts of science museums, things like that. There's just not, and you don't have as many things like orchestras, like musical performances. Again, they certainly exist. And in fact, I have a friend here in Bangkok who lives in the same condo as I do, who was involved in one of the orchestras here. So they exist. They're out there. You can find them. You can go watch a concert. But they're kind of a big deal in the United States, like the Boston Philharmonic or the Boston Pops or the New York Philharmonic or the Philadelphia Orchestra. There's the Chicago Orchestra. There's many of them that are very famous. Lots of big performances, lots of them. So there's more art in the U.S. And a lot of that is one of those things that I mentioned that has to do with wealth. Because how do you pay for that? I mean, a concert, I guess, can be paid for by people that attend the concert. Yes, they can be. But a lot of times with that type of music, sometimes it can be hard to draw the crowds. Usually the ones I've been to, they're drawing a good crowd. But sometimes it can be a little hard to draw the crowds. So a lot of those get some extra funding from either wealthy people or from the public. And that means it comes out of tax dollars. Well, the government here in Thailand probably cannot afford to put tax dollars towards those type of things. Not a lot. I mean, they already do. I'm sure a lot of these art things that I mentioned are paid in part for by the government. But not always. They can't always be doing that. Okay, so the second one on my list was Ladyboys. Okay, this one might be kind of funny, right? Ladyboys, ha ha ha. But it is very different. In the United States, you will almost never see them. I mean, there are occasionally some effeminate guys you'll see, and maybe they'll wear a little bit of makeup, and they might be... But I think they'd qualify more under the term that I've heard someone tell me, which I hope is not an offensive term. I don't think it is, although people kind of laugh when you say it. But oksao. I think it's more oksao than that is ladyboy. So we don't really have ladyboys, not in the true sense. I'm not saying we don't have trans people, but that's not really a ladyboy. I'm not saying we don't have some effeminate guys in the U.S., but that again, that's not really a ladyboy. We don't really have them so much, and even the effeminate guys, when they're putting makeup on and things like that, are very uncommon. Here in Thailand, it's still not that common, but it's open and accepted. I can tell you that in my classes, I almost always have, not in each and every class, but every semester, I have at least a couple of students who actually are males, at least at birth. I don't know. Some of them do decide to be trans later, and when they're figuring themselves out. So I don't want to say they're men if they don't feel that way. But at birth they're men, but they dress up as ladies, fully makeup, female clothing, in the classroom, right here at the university. No one cares. Everyone supports them. Actually, I think this is the first year I don't have any. I'm trying to think if there are any in one of my classes. There might be one. I don't think so. I don't think I have any ladyboys in any of my classes this year. But I almost always do. Last year I had a few. Almost always. It's open and accepting towards that here in Thailand. In America, it's not very accepting towards that. Okay, the third one on the list was shoes in the house. This is a very East versus West thing. And frankly, I'll be honest with you, even though I'm American, this is one thing I agree with Eastern cultures on. And that is that in Eastern cultures, you take your shoes off before you enter the house. Or maybe you can walk in the front door, but you take them off and leave them right there. You leave them at the front door. In Western culture, we just wear our shoes in the house. Mostly. I've certainly seen some people in Western culture where they take their shoes off, too. And I think that's because the Eastern culture is just quite honestly better in this regard. Think of where your bottom of your shoes have been. And then sometimes when you're watching TV, you're going to lay on the floor while you're watching TV, maybe. I mean, we do come in contact with the floor sometimes. And the bottom of your shoes has been out walking on the ground. Which, okay, if it's just grass and even dirt, I mean, dirt's not clean, but it's just dirt. It washes off. That's fine. But there could be other stuff out there that you're walking in. So, yeah, take your shoes off before you go in the house. Or right after you get into the house, at least. So shoes in the house, that's a big difference. And I can tell you my house growing up, nope, we never took our shoes off going into the house. You walk into the house, you just keep your shoes on, you wear your shoes all around the house, you just walk around in them everywhere. Yep. The only time you take them off is if you've been out in the mud and your shoes are very muddy. Then yeah, as soon as you walk in the house, you take them off and leave them at the front door until the mud dries off, and then you take them outside the front door and bang, 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 bang. You bang them together to get all the mud off. All right, another difference is dual pricing and tipping. Okay, these are actually two different things. Dual pricing, this is actually one area where Western culture is better this time, because this really is just wrong, something that some Thai people do. Some Thai restaurants do it. And that is that their prices, like if they have an English menu and a Thai menu, their prices on their English menu will be higher. I will tell you that I have not seen a lot of places do this. I think this is going kind of out of style, and it should be, because it's wrong. You should not be charging Farangs a different price than you charge your Thai people. Just charge the price to everyone. So... but that is dual pricing. Dual means two. That does not exist in the West, and in fact, you'd get in trouble for that. I'd have to think about. Yeah, that probably would be considered illegal because it's considered discrimination. Yes, in the U.S. that would be illegal. Yeah, if any business did that, dual pricing, they'd get fined. They'd get sued. They might even be put out of business. That's illegal. You can't do that. Tipping, this maybe isn't such a big difference. I mean, it's a difference culturally. in that you're not required to tip here in Thailand, but there are some countries where if you tip, they'll actually get offended. I don't think they get offended here in Thailand. In fact, I think they kind of like it. It's more money. Yay. And I think most Westerners, even though we know the rules that you don't have to tip here, I think we still do tip. We maybe don't tip as much as we would in the U.S., but we still tip a little bit. We give a small tip here. So it's not a huge difference, because it's not like tipping is not allowed in Thailand. And it's not like they don't want to be tipped. If you tip them, I think they're happy to take the money. There are some countries where if you tip them, they'll actually be offended. I don't think that's the case here in Thailand. But there certainly is a difference in terms of how much it's expected. In the U.S., tipping is much greater, and it is absolutely expected. Unless the service is terrible, you'd better tip. And where do you tip in the U.S.? Restaurants is the biggest thing. And it's usually a sit-down restaurant with a waiter, because the waiter is the one who gets the tip. In other words, you go to McDonald's, you don't tip them. Yeah. Nobody tips at McDonald's or Burger King or KFC. A restaurant you sit down at with a waiter, you tip. It's usually about 15 or 20%. But there are other people that you tip as well. Taxi, you would tip. Again, you don't really do that here in Thailand. But in the U.S., you would tip your taxi driver. You would tip someone like at a fancy restaurant or some place where they take your coat at the front door. When you go pick up your coat, you tip them. Another type of fancy place you might go to, they might park your car for you. You would tip the person that parks your car. Those sort of things. Okay, next one on the list is stray dogs and cats. This is kind of a big difference. And this one did kind of surprise me when I came here. I mean, it's not so huge of a difference, because it's not like an American wouldn't know what this is. It's not like we don't have stray dogs and cats in America. But they're so uncommon that, especially dogs, cats a little less so, but we definitely have more of those. But even those are still pretty uncommon. But stray dogs especially, they're so uncommon that if you see one, you don't even think it's a stray dog. You think, oh, it must have gotten out, because most Americans keep their dogs in their house. A lot of Thai people don't. They keep them fenced in or whatever. But in America, most of them are in their house. So you think, oh, that dog must have gotten out. Must have gotten loose. That dog is loose from their owner. That's what you think when you see a dog just running around somewhere in America. You don't think stray dog. Here in Thailand, and especially if you're in the cities, yeah, you think stray dog. Yeah. That's generally a bad thing. The good thing is, because of the Buddhist culture here about treating animals, most of the stray dogs and cats people will feed them and things like that. In fact, I even do that. I have a couple of dogs near where I live that I think are stray, because they're out all the time. And sometimes I'll give them treats, give them food, give them water even. I haven't given them water in a long time. I think a lot of people do that, though, because one of them is really fat. Doesn't need more food. So the only good thing about that is that those dogs usually get cared for here. Whereas in America, they probably wouldn't. And so the few that you do see, that you do know are strays, you usually know that because they're so skinny. And they look terrible. That's kind of how you would know that they are a stray dog in America. So that's a kind of a difference, is we don't have nearly as many of them in the U.S., and those that we have are not treated as well as the ones here. Now, we do love animals in the U.S., so if someone can find them, someone that loves animals can find that stray dog, find that stray cat, get them to a shelter, they'll get them taken care of, and then get them adopted out to a family that will own them. So we do try to, so it's not like nobody cares about those dogs, but they can go a while without getting cared for. And so they can get really skinny, they can get sick, they can have problems. And so that's kind of the difference there. All right, the tap water. First of all, what is tap water? Tap water is the water where your turn comes out of the faucet. So not water that you buy at a store. Water that comes out of a faucet. Difference here is simple. Not going to spend a lot of time on this one. The difference here is simple. In the U.S., it is basically law that the water coming out of the faucet you have to be able to drink it. In fact, there's been a big problem in the city of Flint, Michigan, where it's been years and they haven't had that. And so that's pretty much required for the government to provide that, and they're not providing it. So it's kind of a big deal. So in the U.S., tap water you can drink. It's safe to drink. And depending on where you get it from, it might even kind of taste good. Like where I'm from, because it comes out of a well, it has extra minerals in it, and it has pretty good, there's actually it's hard to even describe the flavor. Obviously, it's not a strong flavor, it's just water. But it has just a slight flavor to it. And it actually tastes pretty good. It's a good flavor. So tap water. In the U.S., you can drink tap water. Here in Thailand, no. You don't drink tap water. Okay, respecting the monarchy and leadership. All right. So the monarchy, definitely, we know that here in Thailand, that you have to respect the monarchy. Leadership, maybe not so much. I hear plenty of people say bad things about, like, one of the prime ministers, and I've heard people from different political sides, so I've heard people say bad things about the last prime minister when we had Chanocha here and when he was running against PETA, and I heard people say bad things about PETA and whatever. People can say bad things, but it's much more severe than that in the U.S. Now, when I say severe, I don't mean to say it's violent, like you can't threaten to kill someone. No. Even though we have freedom of speech, you can't threaten. That doesn't mean you can threaten someone. But what it does mean is you can say lots of bad stuff about people. And so people really attack leadership strongly, especially if they think they deserve it. I mean, some people will do it even when someone doesn't deserve it just because they're so partisan, they're so biased. But people will really attack leaders. It's true in most Western cultures where they have freedom of speech, but it's also true in the U.S. And in the U.S., we definitely would not respect a monarchy either, to be honest with you. I know that's an important thing here in Thailand, but because the U.S. was formed because of breaking away from a monarchy, it's kind of within the American spirit to not be okay with that. So even that we wouldn't respect. But of course, we come here. We know it's respected here. We act properly. We don't disrespect the monarchy here. But generally, in U.S. culture, it would be okay to do so. Okay. The why. Now, this one is a little confusing just because we simply don't have it in the U.S. Now, the reason it's confusing, because it's pretty simple, right? Just, what's so hard about that? Well, here's the problem. And this is something I've come to learn as I've lived here, is I know there are like 3 levels. You have like this and this and this. And okay, well, which one is for who? And are you supposed to return the why to anyone who gives it to you? For example, I'm a teacher, and so sometimes my students will do that to me. Well, I know kind of the levels are important here in Thailand, and so since I'm above them as the teacher, I mean, I don't think of myself as perfect. I make plenty of mistakes, so I don't even like to think of myself as being above the students. I'm just trying to help them. I'm just trying to teach them. But whatever. I know that's kind of how it's viewed here. But so since I'm above them, do I need to show them respect back because they did that to me? Do I have to do that back to them? I mean, how does that... It's very confusing. I'm still learning that. I mean, I've definitely learned some. Like I said, I know there are different levels of why. I've learned that. But I'm still learning who is supposed to do why to who, and is anyone bothered if I don't do it? Because as a Westerner, maybe they don't expect me to do it. Maybe I shouldn't do it for fear that I will do it wrong, do the wrong level. Maybe I shouldn't even do it. It's very confusing. Okay, we have 2 left here. The next one, also very easy. It's the squat toilet. We don't have it in the U.S. We have the sit-down toilet. It's very weird for us to try to use a squat toilet because it feels very uncomfortable. Honestly, there's actually been research done on it, and the squat toilet is probably actually healthier for you for multiple reasons, actually. But like if you have bad knees, like I kind of do, it's not comfortable at all. So that's a very basic difference. And I know here in Thailand there are plenty of sit-down toilets. Most places seem to put in sit-down toilets now and not squat toilets. But that's only kind of a recent development. For example, we have buildings at my university that are only 30, 40 years old. Not that old. I mean, I know that's kind of old for a building these days in Thailand, but it's not really that old. Thailand's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's not that old. So we have buildings 30, 40 years old at my university that have squat toilets. But most of the newer buildings are almost 100% sit-down toilets. So I know it seems like Thailand is transitioning over to mostly sit-down toilets, but we definitely still have some squat toilets. Like I said, my university has some. I don't like using them. They're not comfortable for me, but that's another difference. And the last one is street food. This is very interesting because it's very popular here in Thailand. It's not very popular at all in the U.S. I'm not going to tell you you can't find it. In cities, you can. Especially in New York City. That's probably the city where it's most known for having street food. But it's really not like it is here in Thailand. Not even close. Not even close. The difference is massive. We essentially don't even have street food in the U.S. Again, we do, and we have a lot of also food, like food trucks. So they're selling food out of a truck, which is, it's going to be the same, similar style food. It's just that they're enclosed in a truck, which is probably better when it comes to U.S. weather because it can get so cold in the winter. So we have some of that as well. But even that, still in the numbers of like food trucks versus the number of food vendors here in Thailand, street food vendors, again, still doesn't even compare. So street food essentially does not even exist in America. I mean, again, it does. But I mean, if you were to compare between Thailand and America. Now, you can find sort of places and styles of that. For example, if you go to a fair or something like that, they'll have a lot of vendors there that might be selling food. And it might be kind of some similar styles, things like that. So it's not like you can't find anything similar to street food in the U.S. It's just that it's not like every day on the street right outside. That's what I mean. And again, it's not like none of that exists, especially if you're in New York City. I used to live in New York City. Oh, well, I lived outside New York City, but worked in New York City. Those exist. There are some. It's just not common. Okay, so those are 10 different cultural and lifestyle differences. And let me just close by saying again that even though I mentioned 10 and there are more I could mention, still the differences are not that huge because the kind of top level culture as far as being open and tolerant and accepting and are quite similar between the U.S. and Thailand. So you feel comfortable there. There are differences you have to get used to, but just generally, broadly, you would feel comfortable there. So if you're a Thai person, you want to go to the U.S., you will probably feel comfortable there. Me as an American coming here to Thailand, I have always felt comfortable here. I have never had a problem. I had no culture shock at all moving here. None. All right. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of An American in Thailand. Let me reach out to any young people out there who are going to be going to university soon. And let me ask you to consider our university here, RMUTP, Ratchamakan, University of Technology, Peranakan. We've got a great university here. Okay, please stay with us now and tune back in next week for another interesting episode. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.